One of 3 teams to start their mini camp today. Matthew Stafford and company, an intriguing team. You see Puka Nacua on the screen there. Heading into next season, a seemingly very complete roster with promising rookies also who may have key roles as contributors. All that will continue to shake out over the coming months, of course. But let's zero in on the Rams' run game specifically. There's no doubt that Sean McVay has been on the cutting edge of offense. So it's interesting that the Rams ran the ball 477 times in 2023, the most in any season under McVay. LA called a designed run on 42% of the plays last year. That's 7th highest in the NFL. Feel pretty interesting. Do you expect McVay and company to lean even further into that run game this season?
Yeah, I sure do, Laura. And I got to start by saying this. I so admire the Rams' ability to adapt. I think there was a time early in Sean McVay's tenure of the Rams head coach and being the Rams head coach where you thought this was a team that was maybe a bit more finesse. They could throw the ball all over the yard, but did they have the grit to get those difficult yards and got-to-have-it situations? And this past season, as you just showed, based off of the volume, this team just pounded teams into oblivion on the ground. And this offseason, they've kind of said, we're going to double down. If you take a look at some of the ways in which they've addressed the running game further this offseason, Jonah Jackson, one of the highest paid guards in all of free agency. Colby Parkinson, one of the best blocking tight ends in the entire NFL. Bo Limmer, 4-year starter at Arkansas, one of the strongest players pound for pound at the program. That guy is made to run block in the NFL. And then Blake Corum, who anybody who follows college football knows was the heart and soul of that national championship winning team at Michigan. Yeah, they had this great Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, but when they needed a yard, 3 yards, 5 yards, the game plan, hand the ball off to number 2 because you knew he was going to find a way, Sam. This Rams running game could be even better than it was last year, and that's saying a lot given their success.
And it's not just the 2 or 3 yards, it's also the touchdowns for Blake Corum. Blake Corum set a Michigan record, 27 rushing touchdowns, 28 total touchdowns. For me, that tells me a few things. Number one, the only offensive player that the Rams went and got in the draft was Blake Corum. Everything else was defense as far as guys they drafted. And so you think about this, the run game that we saw last year is really just more of what we've seen from Sean McVay. I played against this offense, and I believe it was 2017 and 2018. And yes, they look like a finesse offense, but they are not. They want to run the ball and play action and get a lot of these deep overs behind linebackers' heads. And so if you can be effective in the run game, like we saw Kyron Williams was, then all of a sudden it makes linebackers go up and look like they're trying to play the run, and then the play action gets the ball right behind them. And so I love the mindset right now that we're seeing from Sean McVay, doubling down on the run and that defense to find ways to win games.
Yeah, you just imagine McVay like in his mad scientist room figuring all this out. It's exciting to think about what that offense could look like. You guys mentioned Blake Corum, the 3rd-round pick of the Rams. He was on the Rich Eisen show and talked about the similarities between Sean McVay and his college coach, Jim Harbaugh.
Total opposite. Total opposites in terms of personality. I think they're both great coaches.
Sure.
But they're definitely total opposites. But I love Coach McVay's energy. He's positive. He's consistent. He's bringing the energy each and every day. Growth mindset. Even as one of the greatest coaches in the NFL at this point. So. I love playing for him. I'm excited to strap up and actually play for him, but I love, going through these OTAs and playing for Coach McVay.
All right, to Atlanta, where the Falcons' mandatory minicamp is underway. Look at new quarterback Kirk Cousins out there opening his first minicamp with the team. This team has a chance to make some waves in the NFC South and maybe beyond, of course. Kirk Cousins getting valuable reps there and in the next few weeks with a group of skill players. It could be formidable. The Falcons have taken a skill player in the top 10 in 4 straight drafts. Michael Penix in 2024, of course, as we all know. Bijan Robinson in 2023. Drake London in 22. Kyle Pitts in 2021, and they're just the 2nd team in the common draft era to select an offensive skill player in the top 10 of 4 consecutive drafts. The Lions also did this from 2002 to 2005. Roz, when you see that list and how that group has performed so far, it's got to be disappointing for Falcons fans, right? We hear from them a lot. We know about that. Is there an expectation that guys like London, Pitts, and Bijan will put up bigger numbers in a Cousins-led offense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, did you see where they were all picked? Look, I mean, like there's a sense that obviously quarterback play held these guys back after the early years of their career. The Falcons haven't had quality quarterback play, and if Cousins is able to perform at the level he did for years in Minnesota, then I think they believe that those guys will be better by extension, which is important. I mean, there are other factors at play. Kyle Pitts was coming off of offseason knee surgery last year, played all 17 games, but I think the Falcons really felt like that limited his explosiveness. And Bijan Robinson was kind of in a timeshare because the coaches felt like that was the way to go with him last year. So, but I think the addition of Cousins is key. It's time to start figuring things out. Kyle Pitts is going into his 4th season. Soon these guys are going to be up for contract extensions. So it's time for these guys to start playing like where they were picked in that draft.
You know, Graz, yeah. And speaking of the draft, we've litigated the pick of Michael Penix Jr. enough. It's time to get back on the focus of the 2024 season, Laura. And the reason why we were also excited about this signing when it took place at the beginning of free agency is that this is the perfect trigger man for this Atlanta Falcons offense under their new coordinator, Zach Robinson, who, of course, has the root under Sean McVay, comparable system to what Kevin O'Connell ran with Kirk Cousins at a very high level in Minnesota. When you see Bijan Robinson and you see Drake London, you need to be thinking about a few years ago, Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. Obviously, for London to get to the level of Justin Jefferson would be a remarkable accomplishment. He may be the best receiver in a very receiver-rich league. But that's what they need to get out of these two players, guys who are instant impact playmakers. There is a level for each of them to get to that has not even been close to scratch yet. This is a potential breakout season. I get it. People are still frustrated by the Penix pick. But I really believe Kirk Cousins is an ideal fit for what they need to do.
Yeah, whatever frustration I might have had was just kind of like washed away when we showed that video to start the segment where you saw Graz Cousins out there throwing it around. I realize it's just practice, but any sense of how Cousins has looked during the offseason program in Atlanta?
Yeah, they've all been happy, Kirk Cousins and the team, with how he's progressed. He has said recently that he's had more throws and more reps in OTAs than he expected to because, he was figured he'd be more limited by coming off of the Achilles injury. But yeah, the expectation is that come training camp, he should be something close to a full participant. The thing to watch is when they're in 11-on-11 team drills and there's the possibility of someone rolling into him, accidental contact. They're going to want to be careful to keep him away from that in the early going. But in terms of how he's throwing and how he's progressing back from the injury, they feel like it's all in good shape and he'll be ready to start the season.
To Dallas next, where the Cowboys had 93 takeaways in 3 seasons with Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator. That's 6 more than the next closest team, the Bills, with 87. Quinn, now the head coach in Washington. Mike Zimmer now running the defense in Dallas. Acho, does that takeaway trend continue?
It does not. And the reason why is that Dan Quinn is no longer in Dallas. For 2 of his 3 seasons as defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn's defenses were number 1 in turnovers. Go back to his time in Seattle as DC in 2013 and 14 as defensive coordinator. 1 year he was number 1 in defense. 1 year he was number 1 in takeaways. And so now that Mike Zimmer's there, the defense will look different. The focus is not as much on takeaways. The 5 or 6 years he was in Minnesota, his defenses were top 10 a few times, but not number 1. So the trend does not continue for the Cowboys and Mike Zimmer.
Of course, the centerpiece of that defense is Micah Parsons, who hasn't been around the team much as he tries to negotiate a new contract. Parsons says he hasn't heard much from his new defensive coordinator.
Honestly, man, me and Zim probably said a total of 20 words to each other. Yeah, he's a very quiet person, and all I keep hearing from the coach is like, Zim likes it this way. I was like, well, I like it this way, so I can't wait to have my true sit down with him. I think it'll be pretty cool because obviously old school mindset, old school mentality. But I think he has a lot of great players, but he ain't never had a Micah before.
Sounds like somebody trying to get a new deal. Graz, I'm sure the Cowboys wish Parsons was more available, right, to work with his new defensive coordinator. Any sense on if his contract negotiations are any closer to being worked out?
I don't think they are, Laura. I think that's a back burner contract issue for the Cowboys right now. They have to get CeeDee Lamb signed. He has 1 year left on his contract. They have to get Dak Prescott signed. He has 1 year left on his contract, and they can't franchise him. But you look at Micah Parsons, he's signed through 2025 because of the 5th-year option. They have the franchise tag available after that. If it were to come to that, they've obviously shown they're not scared to use it. So no, and I think Micah made some comments last week to that effect too, about knowing he has to wait given the other situations situations on the roster. So, no, and by the way, in terms of availability this offseason, he was at mandatory minicamp, and he was in contact with the team throughout OTAs, even while he stayed away because he wanted to do his own workout program away from the facility.
I feel like I've seen him at like 6 NBA games as well, Graz. Apparently, the guy's got versatility to his skills. He's a podcaster as well.
Yeah.
I'll say this for the Cowboys as it pertains to all these contract negotiations. They've boxed themselves into this corner, right? This is a team that has done exceptionally well with some early extensions for players that either are still on the roster, as was the case with Zach Martin, a potential Hall of Fame guard. They had an incredible deal with Tyron Smith, who of course now is with the Jets. And now, Dan, they've allowed other people to forecast the market and get ahead of them with players that play the same premium position as the likes of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons do. So for the Cowboys, the ultimate reality for that kind of patience is they're going to end up paying at the top of the market rather than getting ahead and winning on the margins a little bit. So they've got a good problem. They got a lot of great players, but fitting them all in and keeping them together going forward is a real challenge for this team, in part self-inflicted because of their patience on the contract front.